Welcome into the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast. Chris Yow, Terry McCormick, the Titan Insider here. It is the week before everything. Thursday night, NFL football coming your way here this week. We've got real games, real teams. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we've got a lot of real exciting stuff here coming your way on the podcast. Thanks for joining us, Terry. Good Monday. Happy Labor Day.
Happy Labor Day to you too, Chris. And yes, the
NFL season.
Yes, the NFL season is upon us, and the first thing right out of the gate is we're going to get to see Derrick Henry in a Ravens uniform on Thursday night. Going to be different.
Yeah, no question there. It's going to be a lot of weird things are going to happen this week with roster moves and whatnot. A brand new year. Everybody's 0-0, and everybody's a Super Bowl favorite in their locker, and there's no question there.
No doubt about it. And the Titans certainly with a new look, and we're going to talk to our special guest, Jason McCourty, about that here very soon. Just about all the differences and the changes that have been made in the Titans.
And the differences, changes everywhere, especially with the Tennessee Titans' new coaching staff, a lot of new faces on offense, defense, and special teams. So we'll get to all of that. And, of course, we've got our Titans stock report with the 53-man roster. We've not talked to you since that has been cut down, so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So please stick with us here on the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast. We'll be right back in just a moment.
He shoots, and he scores!
We are back on the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast. I'm Chris Yow, Terry McCormick joining me, and now our special guest, Jason McCourty, joins us, CBS analyst, coming to you. And Jason, we greatly appreciate you taking some time with us, man.
No problem. Good to see you guys.
First of all, Jason, congratulations on you and your twin brother, Devin, being selected to go into the Rutgers Hall of Fame. That is no small accomplishment. Congratulations, buddy.
Appreciate it. Very humbling. Didn't really expect that, but a really cool honor to be able to go back to Rutgers. Obviously, there'll be a dinner and all of that, and then go back to the game. So it's been a lot of change in this current year for myself, but a lot of fun.
Let's start by talking about the Titans and the changes that have been made. I mean, we were talking off air about when Ken Whisenhunt came in here and changed everything, and all of a sudden he was going to have a dual threat quarterback and Jake Locker drop back 35 times and throw the football, like he was Kurt Warner, and that didn't work out. But the Titans, in making radical changes this offseason, bringing in Brian Callahan as the head coach, Denard Wilson as the defensive coordinator, and a whole slew of players to put around Will Levis on both sides of the football. What do you like about this Titans team, and what kind of questions do you have about them as they go forward with Brian Callahan and quarterback Will Levis?
Well, what I like, I would say, starting off with bringing in a guy like Brian Callahan. He was in Cincinnati, and obviously the development of Joe Burrow, but Burrow was a guy drafted extremely high who came in and performed well. But you look at last year, and I know Callahan didn't call the plays, but at the same time, Joe Burrow goes down with an injury. A guy, Jake Browning, comes in the game, and everybody's going on the roster, checking and researching who Jake Browning is. And right away, he comes in and he has success leading that Cincinnati Bengals offense. Of course, not as well as Burrow did, but they were able to find ways to continue to produce on the offensive side of the ball. So as you mentioned, Ken Whisenhunt, how he came in. And the tough thing for us as players was Wiz was a guy that came in and was just, all right, I'm a successful head coach. I've implemented my system at different places. and the system has proved to work. The only issue is when he got to our team, we maybe didn't have the pieces in place for that system to work. And how do you adapt and how do you adjust when that isn't the case to fit with the players around you and what their strengths are? I think that'll be the challenge for Callahan is, all right, now you have a guy like Will Levis who's gotten there. He's going into his second year. How do you develop him and bring him along? What I do like is you're not just bringing a new head coach in, but Rand Carthon went out and got guys that I'm assuming that him and Callahan sat down with and said, all right, what do you need for your offense? They go offensive line, J.C. Latham in the first round. He's going to be starting that tackle for them. Then you go out and you get a guy like Calvin Ridley to come in. And now you look at their wide receiver room. Whatever happens with DeAndre Hopkins, whether he's able to go this week or if it's further down the line. But now you have Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, and DeAndre Hopkins. And that's a totally different three wide receiver look for a guy like Will Levis. And then you add Tony Pollard in the backfield. So you start to make the moves that you say, all right, you know what? This is the offense I want to run. What are the pieces that we have to run it? But what are the ones that we can come and plug and play and be able to do it? And then on the defensive side of the ball, I look at how they brought in veterans. I think that has been the biggest thing. I mean, the secondary is brand new with the guys that they brought in. A guy like Quandre Diggs, who's had a lot of success, Jamal Adams, come from the same team. So already you have two guys that come over with a relationship to be able to build on. But the cornerback position, and obviously I was a corner, but I'm fascinated by that one. L'Jarius Sneed, to me, was one of the very best cornerbacks in the NFL last year and had so much to do with the Kansas City Chiefs winning a Super Bowl because I played with a guy in New England and Stephon Gilmore. When you can go and assign a guy to the team's best wide receiver and you don't have to help him, he just goes over on the side of the field and covers that guy. I mean, it changes the whole complexity of the defense. And Chidobe Awuzie, he's still, last year was coming off the ACL. If he continues to progress, he was playing at close to an all-pro level before he went down with an injury. So those two guys on the defensive side of the ball at corner, and obviously the linebacker position has gone over an overhaul as well. But so many new pieces and guys that have had success in this league that'll now be in Nashville.
Does it worry you at all that with so many new pieces and Sneed and Woozy did not get to play much in the preseason together, that they've not had a lot of time on the field, getting used to each other, knowing where each other's going to be? Because, you know, you can talk and you can communicate and do all that thing, but there's really no substitute for knowing the guy that's next to you and how he plays the game. How long do you think that process will take?
And it depends because every guy is different. There was guys I played with that didn't need many reps because mentally they were able to pick it up. I think the challenge for them is not only are you adding new players, but the point that you made, Denard Wilson, you're also adding a brand new system defensively. So it's not like you can look to the guy to the left or right of you and he's been playing in this system for the last 5 or 6 years and he already knows the checks and can kind of keep you up to speed. Everybody's kind of learning it at the same time. So yeah, that is a concern. But I think also when you look at it as some of these things, they have to happen. You have to go through all of this change. That was the one thing we talked about all my time in the league, that change is the one thing that's constant in the league. And that's whether I've been on a Super Bowl winning team and a team that hadn't won a single game in the season. And change still happened in the offseason. But when you're not winning, it's major changes. And you look around that team, there's a lot of guys that are new to the Nashville area. So it's going to take a little bit of time. But that doesn't mean you can't win while you're doing that. That's the thing. You look at their first opponent and the Chicago Bears. They're going through change too. They have a brand new rookie quarterback, a new offensive coordinator, and Shane Waldron. So there's things that they're going to have to kind of put together. And yeah, they've had time together in the preseason. We've watched them on Hard Knocks and all of that. But teams are all going through their own challenges to start the season. When I was on Good Morning Football, Kyle Brent used to always say week one is a liar because a team comes out and there's a team that gets blown out and you're like, well, there goes their hopes for the season. There's a team that wins a game that you didn't expect them to win, and now you're crowning them as the division winner. So you kind of figure it out as you go. When I was in New England, we always used to say those first 4 games, the first quarter of the season was about determining who were your guys and what was your system going to be. Were you going to be a man team, a zone team? You're even figuring out starters to a certain extent at that point. And then from the second quarter on, it's go time.
You're absolutely right. That reminds me of something that the late, great Floyd Reese told me one time. He said that in the first 3 weeks of the season, you'll get everybody's best shot because the bad teams don't know they're bad.
That's very true. I've been on a lot of those bad teams that didn't know we were bad until it got to the end of the season and we were booking our vacations by week 12 because we knew we had no shot at the playoffs.
Let's go back to talking about Denard Wilson, that defense. I want you to put your coaching headset on for just a second. If you're Denard Wilson, knowing that Caleb Williams is making his first start, and yes, this guy's been heralded as the next Patrick Mahomes, the greatest thing since sliced bread coming into the league, but he's still a rookie quarterback making his first start. Are you throwing the kitchen sink at him with blitzes and making him make quick decisions, or are you going to lay back and try to disguise things and confuse him right out of the gate?
I'm throwing the kitchen sink at him, but it's not all about blitzes. It's more about disguise. And I think that's the biggest thing, because for a quarterback, if you just blitz me every play and you're playing man behind, or it's easy for me to tell it's blitz, I can now get into the next thing I want to do. Coach can coach me up on the sideline and say, all right, when they show us the blitz, look, we're going to this play, and you know exactly what you're going to do. I think it's, for Denard Wilson, is all right, and I think for that's the chess game within it, where we show you one thing and now we want to make it look like something. And that's where, when you have veteran safeties like they have, you can show a blitz and then turn out of it and play zone. You can show zone and then come roll late with a blitz. And I think those are the things that are challenging for a quarterback, because I think sometimes when I was on defense throughout my career, we'd go out there and we'd get a young guy and we say, you know what, we're going to blitz him, we're going to play man. There's no easier thing for a quarterback to do if he sees a single high safety and it's man-to-man. Even though you're bringing pressure, I can go 3 receivers to one side and put my best receiver backside. And for them, that could be a DJ Moore, that could be a Keenan Allen. And say, all right, if I got one-on-one on somebody, if I'm Caleb Williams, just stare down that one guy and know that if there's no help coming, I can just go to that receiver, and it kind of can simplify the game for you. So I think for Denard Wilson, you're going to see some of those 2 high safeties and those guys being able to mix looks up and making things look a little bit different. And they're going to play some man, some zone. I would say you're kind of rolling it out on there, the Rolodex of all your different calls, to try to confuse him with things of that nature. And then it's a matter for him of, they're implementing a new system as well. How much your own system do you guys know? Have they mastered it where you can go in there and just go to call and feel confident that the guys can go out there and execute it? But I think the fact that they have that big guy, Jeffrey Simmons, up front, it allows them to do a lot of different things from a coverage standpoint in the back end.
All right, one more for me, and I'll turn it over to Chris here, because I know he's got some things he wants to ask you. But this is a guy that I know you're very familiar with, even though he got here a couple of years after you were gone. But how big a gain is this for Kevin Byard?
Oh man, this is huge, and I'm speaking it from my own experiences. I remember I left Tennessee. I was 8 years in and played in Cleveland. I was hurt the time where the Titans came into town, and I couldn't play in that game. And it just means a lot to you in the sense of, obviously you want to win the game, but I remember being out there in a boot and pregame and just seeing all the guys, from Steve Waterson in the weight room to all the players to the trainers. And Byard, much like myself, he had a huge impact in that community and did so much. So there's so much love within that. So you get to open up and you're going against your former team where you were a captain, where you were all the things that you want to be, an all-pro while he was there. And I just saw that he's been named the captain for the Chicago Bears. So it's going to mean a ton to him, because as an athlete, you love to compete. And when you're moved on, whether it's traded, cut, however, self-doubt can creep in, where you were there for so long. And it's like, man, they don't think that of me anymore. And then obviously things didn't go well in Philly. So I think for him, this is almost like a prove it game to yourself, as well as you want to prove to them, like, nah, y'all made a mistake when you let me go and thought that you can just move on from me. And to Kevin Byard's credit, now it's 2 brand new safeties in there, and Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs since he left. So it's a huge one for him. You want to win that game. You want to talk trash, and you want to have a good time playing against so many guys you know on the team.
Jason McCourty joining us here. He's a CBS analyst, obviously a former Titan, as we have made very clear to this point in the podcast. And Jason, we appreciate you taking time with us. My biggest question, and everybody's getting ready for their fantasy football seasons, and so yesterday, big discussion at our table was the Titans defense. If the Titans defense can be a top half of the league defense, they're going to be really tough to beat. And to me, there's only one real weakness of this Tennessee Titans defense, and that's inside linebacker. How important is it for these guys, Kenneth Murray, Jack Gibbons, to be at least at lowest adequate?
I mean, that position is everything. And when you say it, it's because you're looking across the line, and we were talking about offense. You'd be talking about how important Will Levis is and his growth and everything, because he's the quarterback of the offense. And on the other side, on the defense, those guys that stand right there in the middle and look the quarterback square in his eyes every single play, they play a huge role. And you're talking about a Chicago Bears team that's coming in week 1 and a rookie quarterback. They're going to try to run the ball. DeAndre Swift, they've added in the offseason. Khalil Herbert, they're going to try to, and for those two inside guys, you have to fill those gaps. You have to make the checks and do everything. You're an extension of the defensive coordinator, Denard Wilson. So it's going to be huge for those guys to have a big game, but also a big season of making sure they've understood the playbook inside and out, and they're out there and they're executing and playing well. Ernest Jones, they've added as well. So they know that they're trying to get better at that position. And I know people have raved about Kenneth Murray, what his addition has meant to this Titans team in the offseason. So you just need those things to continue to progress. And I'm sure Denard Wilson, as he's coming up with his defense, and when he first got to town, that was something that's been a focal point for him.
And, as we move a little bit to the other side of the football, what are your expectations? Because, yes, Chicago looks completely different, particularly on the offensive side of the football. But, this is a defense that certainly doesn't give you the heebie-jeebies if you're the new Titans offense, right?
Well, this is a defense that towards the end of the season last year, they really started to step up, and they made a ton of plays. And you looked at it, Justin Fields was leading that team last year, and they playing Green Bay Packers late in that season, and their playoff hopes were still alive. And a lot of that had to do with Eberflus taking over the defense, and the defense kind of thriving from that point on. They trade for Montez Sweat, who comes over from Washington. Jalen Johnson was an all-pro at the cornerback position. So they have guys, and I think they felt like they were a pass rusher away because they were in on the Matthew Judon trade sweepstakes, and they missed out on him. But this is a defense that is a really good defense and makes a ton of plays on the football, missing a pass rusher. But if you're the Titans offense, you're looking at Chicago and you're saying, all right, we're coming in, and you just want to set the tone. And I look at it from a quarterback standpoint with a guy like Will Levis. You get rid of Derrick Henry, and Terry, you said it, like, we're going to see him in a Baltimore Ravens jersey to start the football season. I was there Derrick's first year, and I remember when he walked into the first meeting room and he was sitting in his seat, and Damian Stafford tapped him on the shoulder and was like, hey, Rook, that's my seat. I remember Derrick Henry stood up, and we both looked up to the sky, and Stafford was like, damn, if I knew you were that big, I would just let you have the seat, and I would have found another one. And he's meant so much to this team, whether they've had success, whether they haven't. He's been the guy that people have looked at because of what he's represented. We're running the ball downhill, the 99-yard runs and everything that he's been able to do. When you move on from Derrick Henry, if we see Derrick go out there on Thursday night and he rushes for 120 yards and he scores 2 touchdowns, for this Titans offense, you got to come out and show that with the 2 guys that you have in Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard and the quarterback and the new weapons on the outside line. Hey, we love Derrick. We moved on from him, but hey, look what we have cooking over here too. We have guys that have speed, agility, and all of these things, and we're an offense that is looking to be one of the top ones in the league as well. So I think even philosophy-wise for them, the moves they've made this offseason is going to be important for this offense to hit the ground running.
Sunday afternoon, you can catch the Indianapolis Colts and Houston Texans on CBS if you are not watching the Titans. I don't know why you would be listening to this podcast if you're not watching the Titans, but if you are able to watch 2 games at once, you can hear Jason on the call. So make sure that and here's the thing, that's great for us because we need to be watching that game. 2 big division rivals. This is a game that's important for the AFC South to start the year. What an important broadcast. What an important matchup in week 1.
Yeah, I'm fascinated. It's going to be a ton of fun with Andrew Catalon and Tiki Barber and AJ Ross on the sideline. For me, this will be my first year calling a full slate of 18 games on the season with CBS. So really excited just to be, I think, back at the stadium. I think that's the coolest part about it, of being there, talking to players, talking to coaches, getting a little bit behind the scenes. It's a ton of fun, and I'm looking forward to being on the call. And hopefully at some point throughout the season, I'll be able to go back to Nashville and get a Titans game.
We'd love to see you. Absolutely. Once again, we appreciate you taking some time with us here and look forward to hearing you on the call. Jason McCourty, CBS analyst, joining us on the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast. Jason, thanks so much. Have a great day, man.
All right, no problem. Thanks for having me. Good to see you guys.
Thanks, Jason.
All right.
Appreciate it.
When we come back, Blaine Kellar joins us. He'll be joining Terry in the press box for several games. So stick around. We'll be right back after this.
He shoots, and he scores!
Being a part of a cooperative is being a part of something bigger. Farm Credit Mid-America is a customer-owned lender that specializes in agricultural financing for farm real estate, operating, and farm equipment. A unique benefit of being a part of the Farm Credit Mid-America Cooperative is our patronage program, which has put over $1 billion back in our customers' hands over the last 7 years. That's the power of a cooperative. Visit us at fcma.com to learn more.
I own the land.
I farm the land. Together we're farmers. This is our cooperative.
Back now on the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast. I'm Chris Yow, joined by Terry McCormick, the Titan Insider, and Blaine Kellar, who will be joining Terry in the press box this season. Thanks for joining us, Blaine. Welcome in.
Yeah, it's tough to follow Jason McCourty this Labor Day as my first appearance on the show, but glad to be here, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Blaine, I know the Titans certainly with plenty of changes this offseason. What are you most looking forward to in seeing how this thing unfolds for the Titans?
Well, I think kind of just looking ahead to this season, and Jason had talked about some of those defensive changes and those big names that the Titans brought in. I think while those names have definitely made an impact across their careers, I'm really interested to see how they hold up, considering there's not as much depth as you'd like behind them. Guys like Jamal Adams and Harold Landry, Chidobe Awuzie, Quandre Diggs, they've all had success. They've also all had injuries, and pretty big ones in their career. Not to mention, L'Jarius Sneed and Ernest Jones are both on management plans and have been throughout the preseason. If the Titans are to be a new look offense and a strong defense, it's really going to come down to staying healthy. And I'm interested to see how these fresh faces kind of stay healthy, if they do, and if not, who steps up behind them in regards to their depth.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, because I think that is the one thing Rand Carthon has done a really good job, along with Brian Callahan and Chad Brinker, of filling the holes. And there were plenty of holes to fill. It looked like Swiss cheese at the end of last year, with so many places that needed an upgrade and so many things that needed to be changed. I mean, you saw just this past week the way that they have purged almost all the 21 and 2022 draft picks from this roster, trying to find upgrades from the outside to bring in. And when you add that to the few holdover players that they have, the starting units on paper look pretty good, but it's the depth that has to be a concern. And this is a team that, as the last couple of years under Mike Vrabel was ravaged by injuries. There were so many guys that lost time and were unable to answer the bell and go out there on Sundays and play. And you're left with practice squad call-ups and backups and guys you've signed off the street. And so I think that one of the things that probably will continue throughout the course of the season is that Rand Carthon and his staff will probably be on high alert to continue to mine the waiver wire, continue to look through practice squads of other teams and things like that to try and find guys as needed to bolster the depth on this roster. Because to me, that's one thing at a number of positions that's a really big concern. I mean, there are only really 2 or 3 positions I feel like that could weather a rash of injuries and not have a big drop off. Where it's going to be a question mark.
And it looks like, they've already done a decent job at finding some guys on the wire. After cut down day, adding, Julius Wood from the Cowboys and Ali Gay from the Texans. Wood was a standout player in the preseason. Guys, he's a hard hitter. He was aggressive. I think at that safety spot, versatile kind of player in the secondary for Dallas, and definitely for the Titans as they kind of try to find a spot for him. Interesting thing about him, he's a guy from East Carolina, but he trained before his pro day in Nashville. So undrafted free agent, a guy who made a big impact in the preseason with 2 interceptions. So if somebody is to go down, you look at him as maybe somebody who could step up as a younger player, and some other guys, like you said, they're definitely going to be sifting through that waiver wire throughout the season.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And you mentioned Wood, because he kind of now becomes the new Elijah Molden, and maybe a much more aggressive version of Elijah Molden, because in a pinch, he could play nickel as well. They have a couple of other options there. Obviously, Roger McCrary is their main nickel, and they want him out there as much as possible. And if one of the corners goes down, most likely McCrary would shift outside, and Jarvis Brownlee would come in either, and can play the nickel if need be. So the situation there is that Wood gives them a backup safety behind the top 2 plus Jamal Adams, and it also can play nickel in a pinch and might find a role somewhere in their dime package. And they also talk about what a good special teams player he is. I think that's one of the things that Rank Barthon brought up when they acquired him. He said that he got a text from the Cowboys special teams coach kind of mourning the loss of Julius Wood there. So that's a guy that maybe shouldn't have been dumped on the waiver wire, should have been kept on that 53 in some form or fashion by Dallas.
It goes, the secondary is definitely a question mark with some guys as well, behind those big name players. The defensive line and outside linebackers are too, though, after, a couple of guys have kind of had their status in limbo throughout the preseason. Arden Key was suspended, then he wasn't suspended, and now he's kind of dealing with a nagging injury. Marlon Davidson on IR after, an injury to him. Of course, you love Jeffrey Simmons and the play that he's had across his career. Jalen Harrell has shown out well as a rookie in the preseason. But you really, I think it goes across the defense that there are guys that you can recognize at the starting spots, but beyond that, it becomes a question mark.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and you're talking about the outside linebackers, the emergence of Jalen Harrell, but also the fact that they kept Caleb Murphy over Rashad Weaver when it came time to dislodge a player from the roster once they had made these late acquisitions with Wood and Gay and getting Ernest Jones from the Rams. It was Rashad Weaver that was shuttled off. He's a guy that certainly has contributed here during his 3 years with the Titans, but I felt like that they felt like maybe that he had kind of reached his ceiling and that maybe it was a lower ceiling. And so they went with a guy like Murphy, who perhaps has a higher ceiling, even as a backup.
Yeah, I think it would be really interesting to watch how that kind of unfolds throughout the season. Both the starters' health defensively starting this first week against Chicago, and then seeing who really steps up in those second and third tier kind of roles. And if somebody from the practice squad finds their way into a more prominent role as the season goes on.
Yeah, and real quickly, because we're running out of time here, but the other place that cannot afford any injuries, the offensive line.
Yeah, no doubt. Sunday, noon. You can catch it on CBS. This is the Tennessee Pro Football Podcast. We'll see you guys after that one.